Meanwhile, President-elect Donald Trump demanding the cast of Hamilton apologize after Vice President-elect Mike Pence went out for maybe date night on the town and got a little more than he paid for.
We are the diverse America who are alarmed and anxious that your new administration will not protect us. But we truly hope that this show has inspired you to uphold our American values and to work on behalf of all of us.
That is just a portion of the sanctimonious lecture that actor Brandon Dixon had to say. But was that really necessary?
Yeah, here with his own message for the cast, nationally syndicated radio talk show host Larry Elder. Larry, good to see you this morning.
Morning.
All right, so Mr. Trump is already up this morning tweeting about what happened at Hamilton. He writes this: our wonderful future VP Mike Pence was harassed last night at the theater by the cast of Hamilton, cameras blazing. This should not happen. That was from yesterday. This is the tweet he wrote this morning. He says, oh, we don't have that tweet yet, but we're going to get that momentarily.
No, the other tweet he said yesterday was the theater must always be a safe and special place. The cast of Hamilton was very rude last night, and a very good man, Mike Pence. They should apologize. So, Larry Elder, what do you make of this apology approach? Does this surprise you at all?
Well, I agree with President-elect Trump. This was disrespectful. I think even outrageous. I mean, my goodness, the man goes to a play and a lecture breaks out, and he's lectured by this cast member, apparently with the support of every single other one of the cast members, on diversity and on protecting America. Regarding diversity, this is a play whose producers once sent out a casting call asking for only non-white actors. Right. And regarding protecting, on the third week of January, Messrs. Trump and Pence are going to take an oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution. So to get a lecture about that from some left-wing stage actor is pretty rude, in my opinion. And regarding protecting, suppose I were a cast member and I looked fetching in one of those white hats, and I didn't like the Iran deal or the Iraq bug-out or the failure to properly vet some of these Syrian refugees, and I felt Obama was protecting us. And by the way, Obama did see the play, and I lectured Obama, I wouldn't work again.
Yeah.
All right, so we do have Mr. Trump's tweet that came out this morning. I'm going to read it to you. He says, the cast and producers of Hamilton, which I hear is highly overrated, should immediately apologize to Mike Pence for their terrible behavior. Your reaction to that, sir?
Well, you remember when Ben Carson at the National Prayer Breakfast turned to Obama and gave him a lecture about Obamacare? The White House was furious and demanded that he apologize. And when Joe Wilson made the outburst and said, you lie, during the State of the Union speech, left-wing columnist for the New York Times, Maureen Dowd, called it shamefully disgraceful and said it was race-based. Now, is this race-based, or has it only happened when the person doing the act is white and the receiver is black? Does it work the other way around? Can you call this race-based?
There you go. Yeah, and also you have, Larry, Lieutenant General Flynn now appointed National Security Advisor, and critics on the left are saying his comments about Muslims have been insensitive as well. I want you to address that, but also beyond these controversies, whether it be Sessions, Jeff Sessions or Hamilton, now Mike Flynn as well. What do you think the president-elect should do moving forward to try to kind of heal some of these divisions? It's not helping that the left keeps attacking, but people are upset. What does he need to do to move forward here?
Frankly, I think he needs to call out the left for their own racism. There's a story about Chuck Schumer, for example, who's leading the charge against Jeff Sessions. In 1974, when he was running for state attorney in New York, there was a group of neighbors in Flatbush, New York, that wanted some blacks out. He proposed to refurbish the tenement where the blacks were living. They'd have to be offered a chance to come back, but they'd be too expensive, and the blacks wouldn't be able to afford it, and therefore the blacks would be gotten rid of. And a man who was at the meeting named Jay Hamilt wrote about it, and crickets. Nobody has ever said a word about Chuck Schumer about this alleged racism.
Larry, let me just...
There's all sorts of stuff.
Okay, right. There's all sorts of stuff on both sides. But my question really is, okay, so we're going to spend the next 4 years with both sides just saying you're more racist than I am.
Unfortunately, that's how the Democrats are. They play the race card because they can't talk about policy. They can't argue that Jeff Sessions has something in his background that would make him be a bad AG. They're going to call him a racist. That's what Democrats do. That's the playbook 101. You're a bigot, you're a racist, you're a xenophobe. You heard Hillary say it. Trump supporters are a basket of deplorables. They're irredeemable. President Obama, when he was running in 2008, went to the Midwest and said they cling to guns and religion. That's how they are. So unfortunately,
I think there's no
denying 4 years, if not 8 years.
I think there's no denying what happened at Hamilton was disrespectful. It was inappropriate. But I think, to Ed's point, too, there is something to both sides coming together and actually having a conversation and letting Vice President-elect Mike Pence actually have a response and enjoy a show with his family.
Right.
Good to have you here, though, sir.
Thanks, Larry.
Right. And real quickly, it could have been worse. It could have been worse. After all, Abraham Lincoln had a rougher time at a play.
Yeah, all right. That might be too soon, okay? A little too soon. Thanks, Larry.
Too soon.
Thanks,
too
Larry.
soon.
First, they waged a war on Christmas. Now the PC police, they're back. They're going after Good Friday? Really? You'll never believe what they're trying to rename it as.
Plus, President-elect Trump extending the olive branch, this time to Mitt Romney.
Interesting. But does their 90-minute meeting mean he's a shoo-in for the Trump administration? Our political panel is going to break down that assessment for you next.
Manhattan already exists, right? Yeah, I'm confused.
That's hysterical.
So we couldn't find any that want to live here.
You know what? It's also so true.
It is.
It is so true.
A lot of people live in a
bubble.
That is hilarious.
Right now. All right, we do have some other headlines to get to this morning. 2 juveniles suspected, and this is a horrible story, suspected of killing a congressman's grandson. They are now in custody. 15-year-old Javin Wilson. He was shot in the head after 2 people forced their way into his Chicago home. Gunfire reportedly erupting after an argument over sneakers. Illinois Representative Danny Davis addressing the gun violence that has plagued that city, but just turned personal, saying, quote, it becomes a part of the culture and an environment that has got to change. And Congress wants answers after reports surfaced that 2 top Obama administration officials want NSA Director Admiral Michael Rogers out. Representative Devin Nunes sending a letter to Defense Secretary Ash Carter and Director of National Intelligence James Clapper asking them to appear before Congress to discuss that report. Rogers is rumored to be a lead contender to replace Clapper as the Director of National Intelligence in the Trump administration. And blatant disrespect for our military. The Gold Star family of Sergeant John Perry of California booed by passengers on board a United Airlines flight while they were on their way to bring his remains home. The family claims that the pilot ordered passengers to stay seated after landing to make sure that they made their connecting flight. Perry was one of 4 Americans that were killed when he stopped a homicide attacker short of his target at Bagram Air Force Base last Saturday, likely saving hundreds of soldiers' lives. Wow. That is a horrible story, guys.
Wow, he's a hero. Yeah, really is.
Well, our hero is Rick Reichman.
He is.
He's a hero to many Americans.
And it is freezing out there this morning, Rick. You really felt it.
You need bigger heroes, guys. Yeah, it is chilly, though. I had to break out the coat. It has finally cooled down. It's cooled down for a lot of the country, at least temporarily, but stormy season is upon us. Take a look at the map, show you what's going on. I do want to show you Wednesday, because a lot of people are thinking, hey, what's happening on Wednesday? I've got some travel plans. Not bad, but the central part of the country, or say towards the Ohio Valley, is going to have some rain. A little bit of snow up across parts of Wisconsin. I think we'll see a few airport delays. And out across the west, we're going to be seeing some rain and some mountain snows. So maybe some delays from San Francisco up towards the Seattle area. So just be ready for that. Aside from that, pretty sunny conditions. Be ready. All of that storm system for Thursday moves towards the East Coast. Here's your temps as you're waking up. You get the idea. It has cooled down a lot out there. The Central Plains very chilly. And we now have the snow moving in around the Great Lakes and in towards the Northeast. In fact, some of that is going to accumulate maybe up to around 1.5 feet across the higher elevations up in towards the Tug Hill Plateau. All right, Ed, send it back to you.
Rick, thank you.
You bet.
President-elect Trump meeting with Mitt Romney for nearly 90 minutes yesterday, his longest meeting of the day. He probably never thought that meeting would even happen. And the big question now is, will his one-time rival be named Secretary of State? Here to weigh in, our political panel, former Romney campaign financial director J.P. Miller, along with Daily Caller reporter Kerry Pickett, and Democratic strategist Michael Tobman. I want to start with you here, J.P., because you worked for Mitt Romney. Was this meeting for show, or do you think he has a legitimate shot at Secretary of State?
I think he has a legitimate shot. I think it's a huge sign for a potential Trump presidency and a brilliant move for him to bring in. Well, he's bringing in people from different viewpoints. It shows that he's very serious about running the country. And Mitt has certainly had differences of opinion with him on a number of issues. And this is, I think, a brilliant move for Trump to potentially bring in a team of rivals to advise him in his cabinet.
But, Kerry, every time I tweet at Ed Henry about Mitt Romney and Donald Trump meeting, I get all kinds of tweets saying Romney called him a fraud, a phony. What is the deal? Do not go to the middle, Donald Trump. Do you think it's a mistake? I mean, he called Donald Trump a fraud and a phony.
Indeed. But you know what? It isn't even just the name calling that I think that will have Donald Trump maybe not necessarily putting him in his cabinet. He also actively opposed him, didn't really help him when he was threatened over in Utah by a third-party candidate. But he may perhaps throw him a bone, maybe an ambassadorship, maybe go further perhaps with problems over...
So maybe there's a middle step here.
Yeah, like a USAID perhaps.
But, Mike, you know, this kind of idea of a team of rivals, Barack Obama tried it when I was covering that transition, 2008 to 2009. Did it work out with Hillary Clinton?
I think it did. I don't think it worked out for Clinton's subsequent presidential aspirations.
But having that division within the cabinet.
I absolutely think so, and I think the bigger position, to respectfully disagree with my colleague, the bigger the position Romney is offered, the bigger person and President-elect Trump looks like. All the name-calling, all the vitriol, all the nastiness, that was yesterday, and you get to rewrite history and recast it because that was a campaign in the silly season, and now it's time to govern. And a lot of the Trump campaign was a conversation internal to the Republican Party, so this is a way to really mend those fences.
All right. Good insights from all of you. We appreciate it. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Sure.
President-elect Donald Trump has always been clear on his plans to combat Islamic extremism. Our next guest is a Muslim American who did not vote for Trump and says she couldn't agree more with what he's saying there, though. And it takes senior housing to a whole new level. The brand new program that could pair college students with grandma. Good morning again, and some quick headlines. Seniors at NYU may soon be rooming with senior citizens. Housing at the university can cost students $14,000 a year. But under this new program, pairing students and low-income seniors, they could see their costs cut in half. A similar program in Chicago has seen success, although Friday and Saturday nights could get interesting, I suppose. And you won't believe what the PC police are doing now to another holiday. City officials in Bloomington, Indiana, renaming 2 of their paid holidays to be more, quote-unquote, inclusive. Columbus Day, they're now calling Fall Holiday. And Good Friday, they're getting really creative there, now calling it Spring Holiday. Really? No Good Friday? Pete?
That's, I mean, come on. We're losing our mind. All right, a wake-up call to all Americans. A renowned Muslim scholar is pledging her support for the new president-elect, Donald Trump. Dr. Katan Ahmed, writing in an op-ed, and I quote, "I didn't vote for Donald Trump, but now that he will be my president, I stand ready to collaborate with his administration to defeat our shared enemy, Islamism, also known as radical Islam."
The author of In the Land of Invisible Women, Dr. Katan Ahmed, joins us now. Doctor, good to have you here.
Great to be here.
It really was a powerful op-ed that you wrote. And it's not just you. There are other Muslims that are speaking out saying, you know, they are standing by Mr. Trump to fight Islam. Why did you want to write this piece?
He's our president, and I think it's very important as a citizen for us to support him. I'm actually invigorated with the possibilities of a Trump administration. It's an opportunity for us to take a fresh look at Islamism, the totalitarian ideology that masquerades as Islam, and come up with solutions to defeat it.
Have you been criticized for writing that piece?
No, not that I'm aware of.
So, I mean, General Flynn has been criticized as the new national security advisor for being anti-Islam or Islamophobic. How do you read, he's said some very candid things about the political nature of Islam. How do you read an appointment like that?
So I would probably distinguish it. I don't know much about General Michael Flynn, but my knowledge is very clear that Islam is not a political ideology. Islamism is. And that's a very important distinction. Someone like General Flynn can be forgiven because we really haven't made that distinction in the United States. And looking at it with fresh eyes, hopefully with our new president, may give us that opportunity. Unlike President Obama, who went at the beginning of his first presidency to Cairo to give a speech, I think our new president should go to places like Louisville, Kentucky, home of one of the greatest Muslims in America in history, Muhammad Ali, or Dearborn, Michigan, home to the biggest American Muslim communities in the United States, and engage with us just as he's engaged with every other American through this process.
Speaking of that, when you look back at the past 8 years, what has President Obama gotten wrong when it comes to fighting terrorism, when it comes to labeling it for what it is? And what can Mr. Trump learn from these past 8 years, in your opinion, to get it right?
So I think one of the chief things that's been very difficult for a Muslim like me, observing Islam, but devoted to combating Islamism, is to find a space to talk about this. And that's hindered by people not understanding the language, and a previous president or a president about to leave the White House not encouraging that conversation. That empowers only those who would masquerade as Muslims, only those who support a radical ideology that is not a religion, but is a political totalitarianism.
And I've always felt like for those moderate Muslims or others who mainstream, you would want that distinction, because otherwise you have this sort of, you have a joining of the two that you wouldn't want. I mean, how do you draw that distinction even more powerful?
So that's a great point, Pete, exactly. And that's where Muslims like me can come and help this new administration in making that distinction. Islam is a very simple faith. The 5 principles: worship, charity, fasting, visiting Mecca if you have the means, believing in one God. That's the sum total of Islam.
Sure.
Islamism is seeking to overturn the existing world order and is a direct threat to secular liberal democracies everywhere. There's no mistake about that. It's a very big distinction.
And what can the Muslim community quickly do to help?
We must give the new president a chance. Islam has a tremendous tradition of welcoming a guest. We must allow President Trump to come into our communities and talk to us and have these dialogues and support him in these efforts.
Dr. Hamilt, very important message. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. For being with us this morning.
Thank you so much.
You got it. All right, thank you. Coming up, what kind of advice can an NCAA champion basketball coach have for Donald Trump? We're going to ask Kentucky Wildcats coach John Calipari what it takes to put together a winning team.
And after Vice President-elect Mike Pence received a liberal lecture from the cast of Hamilton, he had a conversation with some showgoers yesterday.
The theme of the show is brotherhood and loving, and I don't believe Pence feels that way.
Do you think Mike Pence is a racist?
I don't know.
I guess he probably is a racist, but I can't call him that right now.
You just did. So we've got, it's Friendsgiving today. We're having friends. My brother's here. I can see him on the periphery. He's distracting me. This is my other brother, Nate, sleeping at the Thanksgiving table.
Are you sure that's not you?
No, it's not me. I promise.
So cute. So this is after he's had too much turkey.
He's had too much turkey. This is another photo of my family in front of my grandmother's house there for Thanksgiving. We're having a good family Thanksgiving this morning.
This is like an entire Pete show. We've got the Pete family. We've got Pete on the street, which you can't beat Pete on the street.
No, Ed, your mom is coming later on the show.
Yeah, it's going to be a short segment. She's not going to be able to talk a lot. You're going to say rap.
We're going to be peppering mom with questions.
It is Friendsgiving, though, on the show, because we always have something to celebrate. And because my sisters are going to join me as well, I'm so excited. It's going to be a big show today. And there's also a lot, as I mentioned, your mom. I can't wait to meet her.
Oh, boy.
Where does she live? Where's she from?
My parents live on Long Island, and my dad will be
I can already tell she's going to be a character.
Yeah.
What is she going to make?
Character would be a good word, I think. Yeah. That's a diplomatic word. She's going to make a family from her great-grandmother some sort of potato dumpling thing that, as a kid, I didn't like that much.
Potato dumpling thing.
Yeah. So, but it means a lot to us. It's a potato dumpling thing.
I'm just like salivating. That sounds amazing.
I'm going to be eating all morning. It's going to be great.
We do have a lot of politics, though, as well this morning. Right, Ed?
We do. President-elect Donald Trump spending the weekend stacking his team, now starting to look outside his inner circle to fill some top posts.
That's right. Mr. Trump holding a marathon of meetings, among them one with his bitter political rival, Mitt Romney.
Garrett Tenney is live from Washington, D.C. with more on how they're mending the fences. Garrett, tell us about this meeting yesterday.
Well, Abby and Pete, they certainly have some fences to mend. You'll remember throughout this election, both men have had plenty of nasty things to say about the other. Now, we haven't heard many details about exactly what was discussed in this meeting or what the mood was like, but it is significant that it lasted for an hour and a half, which was the longest of all of President-elect Trump's meetings yesterday. We are told it was a wide-ranging discussion, including global politics and the U.S.'s role in the world, and those are important conversations for Mr. Trump to have with Mitt Romney, who is said to be one of a number of people under consideration to serve as his Secretary of State. Now, after their meeting, Mr. Trump yelled to reporters that it went great. Romney, he wouldn't say if he had been offered any position, but he did describe the meeting like this.
We had a far-reaching conversation with regards to the various theaters in the world where there are interests of the United States of real significance. I appreciate the chance to speak with the President-elect and look forward to the coming administration.
Romney was one of a number of meetings Mr. Trump had with outside advisors and potential cabinet picks yesterday, including Michelle Rhee, the former chancellor of D.C. Public Schools, who's been mentioned as a potential pick for education secretary, Robert Woodson, who works on community-based anti-poverty programs, and Todd Ricketts, who is an owner of the world champion Chicago Cubs. His other big meeting of the day, though, was with retired Marine General James Mattis, who senior transition officials tell us is a, quote, very strong candidate for Secretary of Defense. Mattis succeeded David Petraeus as commander of U.S. Central Command and oversaw all military operations in Iraq and Afghanistan until he retired in 2013. After their meeting, Trump was clearly impressed.
Well, we think he's a great guy. I mean, he is some great man.
So we're hearing now, is that amazing?
We'll hear some things tomorrow, I think.
Now, if you could hear that, it was a little bit faint. Mr. Trump said, I think we'll hear some things tomorrow in regards to potential cabinet picks. So today, later today at some point, more could be coming from the Trump transition team.
Now, Garrett, didn't I see you in the Washington Bureau with a Chicago Cubs t-shirt? I just think you should disclose these things. If you're going to tell us.
Definitely biased.
You know, proud Chicago Cubs fan, especially this season. Other seasons, maybe not as much.
Yeah. All right, love you, Garrett. Good to see you.
No, I mean, James Mattis is a warfighter.
You call him Mad Dog Mattis.
Well, everybody calls him Mad Dog Mattis.
In the military.
In the military, the Marine Corps, elsewhere.
He seems like a mix of someone who was thoughtful but also tough.
If you have Mad Dog Mattis and Warrior Monk as your two nicknames, no, he's a total warfighter. I think folks in the military, if he were to be picked for SecDef, I mean, there's a lot of great picks out there. It would be a clear reorientation of our military.
And look what's on tap for today, too. I think when you've got a power player like Rudy Giuliani going behind closed doors with the president-elect, and I think Chris Christie, obviously, he's had some struggles recently. A lot of people trying to write his political obit, and I've been hearing from people inside the transition, he still has a shot at a spot in the cabinet. And one other name I want to mention, Robert Johnson, the founder of Black Entertainment Television. He's still a power player in Washington. I see him around town, and I think there has been criticism that so far the only people they've rolled out have been white men. We heard Geraldo Rivera talking about that yesterday. And if you can recruit someone like Robert Johnson, big African-American power player to this cabinet, I think that's going to be obviously, and a Democrat, by the way. Sure. He may not want to join the cabinet, but reaching out to other people like that, at least to get their thoughts.
Well, Michael Flynn's a Democrat, registered Democrat his entire life as well. I mean, people are dismissing some of those.
Some of his tweets might have tilted a little to the right lately.
Well, reality has a way of smacking you in the face.
But I think this is a mix of talking to people about a potential cabinet position, according to Jason Miller, but also just hearing from people. You know, I think Mr. Trump is at a place now where he's like, this is a huge job. I want to get this right. I want to win this thing, as he often says. And that to do that, you've got to sit down at the table with a mix of different people, with a mix of different backgrounds, whether it is Mitt Romney or the creator of BET or Mattis. I mean,
when you want to hear from people, by the way, what do? You send Pete on the street. And that's what we did yesterday, right? We say, look, let's not just talk about these stories. Let's do some reporting. And Pete went over to Broadway.
Well, we did. But, you know, yesterday, obviously, our viewers, if you're watching us and you're watching this morning, you saw at Hamilton, Vice President-elect went to go see the Broadway show Hamilton. He was booed by some when he came in. And then there was a lecture given to him after the speech telling him he needs to be a president for all Americans. And Donald Trump reacted, as he does in real time with Twitter and the medium that he has, saying, hey, you should apologize. This is a tweet just this morning from Donald Trump responding to Hamilton. He said the cast and producers of Hamilton, which I hear is highly overrated, should immediately apologize to Mike Pence for their terrible behavior. He's saying he is your vice president-elect. You may not like him, but treat him with respect.
That point is fair, but fact check on being overrated. A lot of people like the show.
I have been to the show, and politics aside, the music is fabulous. I do love that Mr. Trump is still tweeting and giving out his voice, because you don't want him to change that much. I mean, obviously people voted for him for a reason. But so the actor came out after yesterday that gave the rant after the show, and he said, well, hold on, you know, it wasn't disrespectful. We were just having a conversation. These conversations need to be had, which I find pretty offensive because it was a lecture, and in nowhere in that conversation did you have Vice President-elect Mike Pence.
There was not a dialogue. They didn't give him the microphone afterwards.
What happened when you went?
So we hit the street. We went to some folks waiting in line to go see Hamilton yesterday to hear what their opinion is. So this is us myself outside Hamilton yesterday talking to folks going into the show. So when you go to a performance like this, are you expecting a political speech or do you want a performance?
I just want to see the performance and, step away from politics.
When you come to a show that's diametrically opposed, to quote the show, of what you believe, I think it's disingenuous for the show not to speak on it, especially when they have that platform.
The whole theme of the show is brotherhood and loving, and I don't believe Pence feels that way.
Do you think Mike Pence is a racist?
I don't know.
I guess he probably is a racist, but I can't call him that right now.
You just did. Do you think Trump and Pence won't be president for all people?
Well, he said he will be, and he'll be put to the test, and I think that's what the cast was saying at the end of the show last night.
I did not vote for him. I didn't support him, but he is now going to be my president, and I wish him well. I want him to do the things he said he was going to do.
When Hillary Clinton came, she was brought backstage, and the whole cast was hugging her. Why didn't the future vice president get hugged backstage?
Everybody has an opinion, so if their opinion doesn't agree with them, they don't get the same treatment, but that's okay.
Do you think that people coming to an event like this are looking for a political sermon?
No, but I didn't think it was a sermon. I thought it was just a couple of sentences to consider all Americans. There was nothing wrong with it.
I'm seeing a difference of opinion right here.
I think that they were disrespectful to the vice president.
So do you think that kind of just a deference or a respect should be given to someone who's been elected to that office?
Yeah, I think that it wasn't fair for them to do that. He was just trying to see the play. He didn't want them to give their political opinion.
Donald Trump asked for an apology. Do you think the cast of Hamilton should apologize?
No, I think that their message was very respectful. I think it was the audience who was a little disrespectful.
I think it was wrong for President-elect Trump to kind of call that harassing. I don't think that was correct.
You think it was wrong? So do you think it's good for the vice president to come to a musical performance and then get lectured politically?
I don't think it was so much of a lecture. People were afraid right now. That's all.
Got a good sample.
Yeah, we got a good sample. I mean,
that 17-year-old kid was the one person who was like, I found that disrespectful.
Oh, he nailed it. Yeah, and that last conversation went on for a long time because you ask people for evidence of why Mike Pence is a racist or all these hate crimes that are happening across the country. And, of course, they don't have any evidence. There's a lot of hyperbole there. And there was a general agreement. They felt, obviously, our First Amendment protects speech everywhere. But, hey, maybe not the best place to do it.
But someone said that you were talking to, I found the audience to be worse than the lecture because there were some boos.
Yeah, there was a little bit of applause when he came in when you hear the video. But you're right, it was outweighed by the boos. And don't boo, don't boo Hillary Clinton, don't boo. I mean, they're at a show.
All the while, Mike Pence had a smile on his face. He stayed there the whole thing. I mean, you got to give him some credit for that.
Of course you do.
And his wife and his family who went.
It's a left of center audience there, but, they can at least be respectful.
Well, nice work, Pete.
Well, we try.
All right, we do have some other headlines to get to this morning, beginning with an extreme weather warning. Heavy snow and strong winds battering the Northeast after a deadly blizzard, dumping more than a foot of snow in the Midwest, winds gusting 50 to 70 miles per hour, creating dangerous whiteout conditions. Minnesota State Patrol responding to hundreds of crashes and spinouts as drivers get pelted by snow and slush. Icy roads now to blame for 3 deaths there. Well, if you're flying for the holidays, your travel plans could be disrupted as hundreds of workers at Chicago's O'Hare Airport plan to walk off the job. And just in time for Thanksgiving, baggage handlers, janitors, and wheelchair attendants plan to protest for $15 an hour. While the strike was intentionally planned for the busy travel season, the union representing the workers says they're not trying to shut down the airport. It's going to be a nightmare. And President Obama entering the final day of his last foreign trip as president. He's meeting with leaders in Lima, Peru, forced to answer questions about President-elect Donald Trump's trade policy, telling everyone just to chill out.
Don't just assume the worst. Wait until the administration's in place, it's actually putting its policies together, and then you can make your judgments.
President Obama will be back in Washington, D.C. tomorrow. And listen to this, NASA successfully launching a game-changing weather satellite.
He has surrounded himself with people like General Mike Flynn, with people like Congressman Mike Pompeo from Kansas and General Kellogg and General Mrs. Alqua. There's a ton of these folks, top flight, top quality people, not just in the military, but in all of national security.
President-elect Donald Trump's choices for Attorney General, CIA Director, and National Security Advisor are clear signals that national security will be a priority for his administration. Now, for more on how his choices will keep America safe is former CIA Director and Advisor to President-elect Jim Woolsey. Mr. Director, thank you for joining us this morning. Let's start with the CIA Director. Tell us about Mike Pompeo and why he's a great pick.
I talked to him yesterday at some length. I had not known him before, but it looks to be an excellent choice. First in his class at West Point, distinguished military career, distinguished legal career. I think he's going to be an excellent director of the CIA.
Jim, tell me, you know the ins and outs of the CIA. What does he need to do? What needs to change? What's atop his list?
Well, the CIA now, after the 2004 reorganizations following 9/11 and all that, it's a somewhat different agency than it was, and it's also been seen a great deal of reorganization from its current director. So that answer to that question is a bit in flux. In part, it's going to do whatever the president wants with respect to covert action, for example. You don't do anything to try to influence events abroad in one way or another unless the president signs a finding and it's presented to the Congress. So that's not something the CIA does on its own, to put it mildly. As far as intelligence analysis and reports are concerned, the DNI is under the system, the chief intelligence advisor to the president, but he or she needs to take the arrangements to report to the president from his point of view. For example, neither President Clinton nor President Reagan had briefings in the morning. They read the intelligence because they didn't want to take the time to have somebody read it out loud to them. And different presidents have done that different ways. So they need to spend a little bit of time shaking down the way they're going to work together, and I think it'll probably work well. How about General Flynn over at the National Security Council? How do you anticipate his pick changing that agency? Well, that's, I think, also an excellent choice. One of the things I like about Mike is he has a history and background of calling it straight, and he's seen some opposition, to put it mildly, within the intelligence system when he does call it straight. But that's the first and principal job of a intelligence analyst or intelligence executive is. Not to get bogged down in trying to please people. And I think that is also what you want to see in the UN ambassador. I hope it's somebody like K.T. McFarlane or a DNI or any other slots, of course, defense and state. Another great name. Absolutely. Jim Woolsey, former CIA director, thanks for sharing your expertise with us this morning. Appreciate it. All right, the mainstream media not letting up on Senator Jeff Sessions, calling him a racist. We're going to discuss more about that because that's just not true.
Welcome back. Well, Democrats are now doubling down, slamming President-elect Trump's most recent administration picks as racist. Now critics are urging him to reconsider the appointment of Senator Jeff Sessions. Listen to this.
He made jokes about the KKK, that he made racial slurs, used racial slurs.
He's going to need a very thorough vetting. Many of those statements, they're old, but they're still troubling.
All right, well, here to weigh in is Fox News contributor and the niece of Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Alveda King. Doctor, good to see you this morning.
Good morning. How are you? And
good.
To all of our viewers, good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
So you just saw that clip we played. We've heard from the media now, members of the Democratic Party, throwing around the racist term almost like it's nothing. What do you make of that?
Well, we here in America have brains. We can think. We can investigate for ourselves. Playing the race card used to work because nobody could find out the truth behind the matter. Senator Sessions prosecuted the Ku Klux Klan. Senator Sessions, went and desegregated schools in Alabama.
But no one's talking about that.
Those are not nobody wants to talk about that because they want to say he's a racist and he banned these racist slurs. Take it out of context. But he prosecuted the KKK. So throwing the race card against somebody who prosecutes racists, it does not add up.
Something that your uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King, talked about a lot was forgiveness and coming together and moving on from things. Why is it today that it seems that the media and in this case the Democrats are having such a difficult time moving on from something that happened decades ago? We all have a past. We all have moments where we say, you know what, I probably would have handled that differently. I probably would have said that differently. Why as a community today do we have such a hard time moving on and forgiving people?
I was an activist in the 20th century, in the 1960s. I was a youth activist and organizer. My dad, Reverend A.D. King, my uncle, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., taught me very well, and my granddad, Daddy King. Now, George Wallace, during those times, was one of the most racist people in our history. And yet, through love, through communication, and through resisting nonviolently, George Wallace repented. And I believe the heart of the servant leader can draw that out of anybody. So that's why I'm even looking at Mr. Trump, his administration, his choices. You know, what would Jesus do? What can I say that will heal? So I'm encouraging Mr. Trump and his picks not to go on the defensive, but to assert that we want to heal America. We want to work together for America. And that's the voice that has to continue. And sanity. You know, the media did not, Kellyanne Conway is right, did not prepare us for a Trump win. And so now we have that. Are we going to keep splintering and dividing, or are we going to come together?
Right. That's such a great point. So I want to get your thoughts on this story we've been covering for the past 24 hours. The play Hamilton, I know you've heard about it. So the cast basically gave a lecture to Vice President-elect Mike Pence. He went there with his family, trying just to enjoy a Friday night out, lectures him about politics at the end of this show. He even gets some boos from the audience. What is your reaction to that?
That was a seize-the-day moment. And so the lecture came, and I think that Vice President-elect Pence, from my understanding, just kind of quietly got up and went outside, but he waited until he heard the whole rant or chastisement. Now, I believe that if I had purchased a ticket and I was just part of the general audience, I would have expected to see a great performance. I might not have wanted to buy an opportunity to hear a lecture, you know. So perhaps that was a seize the day, seize the moment. America does have problems. Right. Much of America is fearful. So I believe now is the time to say we are going to make America great. We're going to heal America. We're going to work together to do this. So rather than to splinter and divide, I believe this is another opportunity to call for unity.
And you're right. Mr. Pence did handle that moment beautifully. I love your advice to them of rise above it. Let's come together as a country. And I think so far we've seen Mr. Trump and Mike Pence do that pretty beautifully over the past week or so. So it's good to have you here this morning.
Yes.
Dr. King, thanks for joining us. All right, coming up, be loyal or leave. One federal judge dropping the gavel on future U.S. citizens with this message about Mr. Trump. Take a listen.
He is your president, and he will be your president. And if you do not like that, you need to go to another country.
Go to another country. Is he right? Your emails are pouring in. That's next.
Welcome back to Fox and Friends Weekend. We are back with some headlines. Trump Tower trumps the White House. The New York Post reporting future First Lady Melania Trump and her son Barron will not move into the White House. President-elect